Biden is the perfect Democratic president. The non-compos presidential model gives the party's left free rein. President Biden won't negotiate, doesn't do press conferences, does only canned events, can't maintain focus, has minimal factual grasp, and his foreign policy activity is totally ceremonial. So naturally he's running for a second term, with the total support of the Democratic Party in Congress. Mr. Biden likely wouldn't be running if his opponent were any of 5 or so Republicans not named Trump. A presidential debate next Tuesday evening against any of them would be a catastrophe for the incumbent. Most Americans of any age or party affiliation don't want Mr. Biden to run again. But the odds are strong, affirmed by the midterm election results, that even more voters don't want Donald Trump to be president again. Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg's pseudo-indictment of Mr. Trump worked like clockwork. Annoyed Republicans increased their support for a Trump nomination, reassuring Democrats they could pull off the improbable re-election of their 80-something candidate. The standard political model holds that politicians do what they gotta do to become the party in power. But even that pragmatic standard assumes the party's path will be diverted by the interests of the person who has made it to the top of the presidential greasy pole. Not this time. I've come to think of Joe Biden not so much as the commander-in-chief as the maitre d'-in-chief, master of the happy handshake. What needs explaining is the current disconnection between professional Democrats and most everyone else over the idea of continuing Mr. Biden's official greeter presidency. What do they see that normal people don't? Last year, professional Democrats seemed in sync with non-career Democrats discomfited by the implications of the world's most powerful man's constant gaffes. Articles appeared suggesting primary challenges to Mr. Biden might come from prominent party governors, California's Gavin Newsom, Illinois' J.B. Pritzker, or Gretchen Whitmer in Michigan. Then almost overnight, the party seemed to embrace the idea of a second Biden term. Yes, the close midterm results were a triggering event, and the prospect of a Trump rerun helped. But I think the Democrats realized they had backed into a system that suits them to a T, the non-compos presidential model of American politics. Not a joke. Since at least Woodrow Wilson's presidency, progressives have tried, with success, to make the states subject to the authority of administered bureaucracies in Washington. Inside the Beltway is a phrase mentioned frequently here, but during the first Biden term Washington has become more like a black hole, with the entire country being pulled into its gravitational force field. Their control of the bureaucratic levers today is unprecedented. Unless you are a reader of the editorials in this newspaper, you would have virtually no idea of the relentless mandating activity of the people running this administration's departments and agencies. A significant piece in these pages days ago by Phil Gramm and Pat Toomey summarized the scale of this juggernaut. If you missed it, read it. As noted, even a progressive Newsom or Pritzker presidency would just get in the way of the comprehensive agenda now being executed by progressive academics and former congressional staffers allied with Senator Elizabeth Warren. They are, for instance, writing expansive interpretations of the implementation rules for the $400 billion of climate subsidies Congress just passed. The suggestion that Mr. Biden should avoid the curse of second-term failure is about him personally. It's irrelevant to what the activists running the agencies could do daily. The EPA's just announced 2027 deadline for tailpipe emissions may be unachievable, but so what? The marching order is a done deal. There would be more of that in a second term. A beside-the-point president is the best thing that has ever happened to the progressive centralization project. That is why Washington's Democrats would embrace a Kamala Harris succession. A tip of the hat, incidentally, to departing Biden domestic advisor Susan Rice, the former Obama operative who surely has helped design this passive presidency model. The greatest peril is foreign policy, whose execution requires presidential leadership. Kissinger needed Nixon, Schultz needed Reagan, and Acheson had Truman. Antony Blinken is on his own, and it shows, as allies like Saudi Arabia and France flirt with China. The U.S. needs to increase spending on national security beyond 3% of gross domestic product. No matter what happens in the world, these Democrats won't do that. The cliché happens to be true, it's early. The hunter anvil hangs over Mr. Biden, along with a fragile economy in tense world. All kinds of stuff hangs over Mr. Trump. We are in a familiar phase, with opinion polls representing reality. They show Mr. Trump with a big nomination lead, thus the coverage has defaulted the election to a Biden-Trump grudge match. Like the Bragg indictment, that advantages the incumbent sleepwalk to re-election. To paraphrase Dirty Harry, Republicans staring down this barrel have to be asking themselves one question: do you think Donald Trump will run from here until November 2024 saying the 2020 election was rigged and stolen? If he does, and of course he will, you lose. Biden is the perfect Democratic president. The non-compos presidential model gives the party's left free rein. President Biden won't negotiate, doesn't do press conferences, does only canned events, can't maintain focus, has minimal factual grasp, and his foreign policy activity is totally ceremonial. So naturally he's running for a second term. With the total support of the Democratic Party in Congress.